During my thru hike of the Appalachian Trail in 2018, I hitchhiked into Rutland, Vermont in order to get some much needed rest. I needed a place to stay when I was there, and so when I learned that there was a free hiker hostel right in the center of town, it seemed like a no-brainer. Right? Well, actually, after talking to some of my friends that I was there with, I realized that this free hostel is run by a cult. And after realizing this, I still decided to stay there. 12 Tribes is the name of the cult, and the Yellow Deli is the name of their hostel in Vermont. They've developed a controversial reputation among the Appalachian Trail community. But is that reputation deserved? Are they preying upon weary hikers, trying to convert them into their bizarre religion? Or are they just being generous and trying to help out the trail community by giving hikers a place to stay? Let's jump into the story of 12 Tribes, their relationship with the Appalachian Trail, and my experience staying with them during my thru hike. 80% of my audience right now is not subscribed to the channel, so if you haven't smashed subscribe yet, dude, please hit the subscribe button. Help me get to my goal of 50,000 subscribers. That would be much appreciated. Defining what exactly 12 Tribes is will largely depend on who you ask. And I think it's only fair if we start by reading what their definition is. Quoting from their website, the 12 Tribes is an emerging spiritual nation. We are a confederation of 12 self-governing tribes made up of self-governing communities. We are disciples of the Son of God, whom we call by his Hebrew name Yeshua. Yeshua? I'm terrible with pronunciation. I apologize if I'm getting that wrong. With all of our hearts, we want to do our Father's will, which is to love one another and be a light to the nations, so that they could see our life of love and know how much their Creator loves them. So that's what they call themselves. But according to a lot of other people, 12 Tribes is simply just a Christian fundamentalist cult. Now, I'm not a religious person. I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that I know anything about Christianity, but I did want to take a brief look into what makes them different from other Christian groups. And I also wanted to say here, 12 Tribes is quite infamous, and so it can be difficult to get unbiased information about them. I'm trying to be fair and just cover the facts here, but there's a good chance I get something wrong. So I really want to encourage you to go do your own research on 12 Tribes. Don't just take everything said in this video as gospel. 12 Tribes was founded in 1972 in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and has since grown into a worldwide organization with around 3,000 members. My understanding is that 12 Tribes is kind of like a mix between a traditional religious group and a hippie commune, which I know is a really weird mix. For instance, they have strict dress codes, for a lack of a better term. All the men have beards and tie their hair back, and all the women dress modestly. Whatever that means. The women wear baggy dresses and blouses, and they also wear headscarves. This example makes them seem like a traditional religious group, like I just said. But then again, they also have that hippie side that I also just mentioned. They often travel around in something called the Peacemaker Bus. They have organic farms all over the world, and they operate restaurants known as the Yellow Deli, which look like this. It's very strange, not the type of imagery you'd think would come from a religious group that forces their women to dress, again, modestly. There's over 20 Yellow Deli locations worldwide, and one of those locations is in Rutland, Vermont, a popular town for Appalachian Trail as well as long trail hikers to stop into. I'm not sure if the folks at 12 Tribes knew this about Rutland before they opened the deli there, or if they just got lucky. But either way, it's clear they see the influx of hikers in Rutland as a business opportunity and maybe even as a recruitment opportunity. Now, of course, 12 Tribes isn't gonna come out and be like, yeah, we focus on hikers and try to convert them to our religion. So I wanna be clear, everything I'm about to say here is complete speculation. But with that said, it does kind of seem like they're intentionally targeting hikers on the Appalachian Trail. These hikers are far away from their families, they're living out of a backpack, essentially making them temporarily homeless, and they tend to be pretty open to making new friends and having new experiences. When you put it like like that, it seems like Appalachian Trail hikers might be a pretty good target for a religious hippie-like cult to prey upon. And another reason why people suspect they might be targeting hikers is because of the hostel they operate, which is advertised towards people on the Appalachian Trail. They actually own hostels elsewhere as well, but for this video, I'm just going to be talking about the one in Rutland on the AT. Now, hostels exist in pretty much every single town along the Appalachian Trail, so the fact that their hostel exists isn't in and of itself suspicious. But most hostels along the trail charge a fee for people to stay there, or at the very least have a suggested donation policy, and they really expect you to pay whatever that specified donation amount is, so it basically is a fee. The Yellow Deli is different, however. Their website explicitly states that they don't expect payment, but rather request a donation or contribution of time to improve the hostel. Again, this policy isn't unheard of from hostels along the trail, but it does seem like they're not really interested in making a profit from the hostel, meaning they maybe have some other intention with it. And from my experience, the other hostels that do have this donation policy are usually doing so because they just really love the Appalachian Trail and their sole intention is to help hikers. And to be fair, that might be the intention of the Yellow Deli. I don't know with certainty, but given they are a religious group or cult and their mission isn't actually focused on the Appalachian Trail, it just seems a little fishy. And it gets even more fishy because when you stay with them, there's a high likelihood that you'll be invited to get off the trail and spend some time on their nearby farm. Now, by most people's accounts, they're not pushy about this, and I'm going to talk about my experience shortly here, but at the very least, the opportunity to go spend some time on their farm will be mentioned to you by one of the workers, or you'll see it on signs and flyers around the hostel. But even under the assumption that they are in fact targeting hikers, is it really that big of a deal? I mean, it's just a bunch of harmless hippies after all, right? Well, yes, but there have been some controversies surrounding the 12 tribes that hikers might want to know about before they choose to stay with them. To be clear, none of these controversies involve hikers specifically. It's got nothing to do with the Appalachian Trail. But still, there's been some shady accusations against 12 tribes, particularly in relation to the way they treat their children. So this is really awkward for me to talk about, honestly, but it seems as though, from my understanding, physical discipline is a pretty standard way for 12 tribes parents to punish their children. I'm not saying that these parents are just going around like beating up their children all the time, but their own website clearly states that they, quote, teach that parents are to promptly spank their children whenever they disobey, which is weirdly phrased at the very least, but it's not exactly unheard of for parents to do this regardless of what their religion is. It does start to get sketchy though when you look into their history with child abuse claims. In 1984, authorities raided the 12 Tribes commune in Island Pond, Vermont over allegations of child abuse. Nothing ever came of the raid though, because a judge ruled that the raid was unconstitutional. So to be clear, they were never punished for this, and we really don't know with any type of certainty what was going on, if there was child abuse. It's just very unclear, and nobody was ever charged with it that I'm aware of. In fact, some of the children that were living at Island Pond at the time have come out and said that there was no abuse taking place. But then on the other hand, some of the other children have since left the 12 tribes religion or cult and insisted that the abuse definitely occurred. And there's also been more recent allegations coming out of Germany. In 2013, German officials took 40 children from the group and placed them into foster care. The whole situation is pretty complicated. I'm not going to cover it all in this video, so once again, I suggest that you do some more research on this. In addition to these child abuse accusations, there have been other accusations against 12 tribes as well. Some of these relating to poor treatment of women, racism. Again, there's plenty of stories out there about this, and you can go look into that. I'm not going to cover everything in this video. And so with all that said, you might think that the Yellow Deli is pretty much just avoided by everybody on the Appalachian Trail. But that's actually not the case. The Yellow Deli has a pretty mixed reputation among hikers. It's not all bad. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I stayed at the 12 Tribes Yellow Deli hostel in Rutland, Vermont on my Appalachian Trail thru hike. It definitely wasn't my idea to stay there. The reason I did was because my friends wanted to, I think largely driven by the fact that it was free or just, you know, a simple donation. I didn't know much about them at the time. I definitely didn't know about these crazy accusations accusations. All I knew is that they were commonly referred to as a cult. I knew it was a religious thing, and it just seemed weird to me, but I also was kind of intrigued, and so my friends wanted to go, and I went with them. Honestly, the number one thing I remember from my time there was that the food was really, really good. Obviously, it's called the Yellow Deli. I've mostly focused on the hostel in this video, but there also is a deli there, just like a normal restaurant that's open to the public. As much as people do tend to kind of rip on the Yellow Deli, I don't think you'll find many people out there saying their food wasn't, at the very least, pretty tasty. But apart from the food, like I said, I was pretty hesitant to go there. And so I knew that there was a chance that someone was gonna invite me to the farm or maybe try to like recruit me or do all this stuff. And I went into the hostel with the idea of just minimizing my interactions with the employees. Of course, I wasn't gonna be rude, but I really did avoid like having any conversations with them outside of just the, you know, taking care of business kind of stuff, like where do I sleep and, you know, ordering food and that thing. I remember there definitely was information about the farm kind of scattered throughout the hostel. Like I said earlier, flyers and posters, things like that. But as far as I can remember, no employees or workers or members of the 12 tribes came up to me and specifically tried to get me to join or tried to get me to go to this weird farm. Again, this is just my experience, but I can tell you that they were definitely not pushy. And having talked to other hikers about this, as well as reading things online, it seems like that's a fairly normal experience. There's a lot of people out there that claim they had a great stay with the Yellow Deli, and honestly, I did too. The only, I guess, somewhat bizarre thing I remember from my stay was that they were pretty explicit that men and women could not share bunks and like even rooms. I think they had separate rooms for each gender, which yeah, that's kind of weird. You're not gonna find that at most hostels, but I feel like there's probably other places that do this as well that aren't religious. I can't remember any off the top of my head, but it's impossible to really say how many hikers have stayed there. I wish there was like a central source where you could just get tons of different experiences from everybody when they stayed there, but unfortunately the closest thing we have to that is random comments on the internet from Reddit and from various articles. Obviously, take this with a grain of salt. These people could be embellishing. I don't know. This is just the best thing we got in order to get a more general sense of how people liked their stay there. I was picked up by a guy who said his friends were making dinner and they had brought hikers back before and figured it was his turn. We got to a huge house and walked into the group in worship. I felt like he hid the truth in order to get me there. I asked for a ride back to the trail and had to refuse several appeals to give the group a chance. I had a bad knee and stayed with those folks for about a week during my 2007 hike. They were always very warm and welcoming to me. I'm glad I got to meet them. They of course are trying to recruit, but I never felt overly pressured. I told them if I ever joined a cult, they'd be it. During my 2017 through, I thought they were very nice people, but something was just off about the whole situation. Also, not sure if I misread the situation, but I believe they were requiring the female hikers to do chores to stay at the hostel, but not the men. I don't remember anything like that happening, but who knows? Again, this is just comments on the internet. In my own experience, I had a lady grasp my hands and tell me to, quote, just stay with them when I expressed gratitude for their free hiker dinner. Let me know what you guys think, and once again, please hit that subscribe button. 80% of my viewers aren't subscribed right now, so please hit that subscribe button, help me get to 50K, and thank you guys for watching.